Hey everyone, it's Sean from Triax Performance here. You probably know me as the funniest, most talented, and best looking of the Triax trio. Now, in this podcast episode, we are chatting all things mental health in the lead up to World Mental Health Day on the 10th of October. Now, there are a few sensitive topics that do get brought up, so please, before listening, do consider if it is appropriate to continue ahead listening for you. And if any of the topics do hit quite close to home, check out the show notes for some resources that you can check out and to help you out there. So I think the three of us really enjoyed having this chat, and we really hope that you do get something meaningful out of it. Enjoy. Be strong.
Well, on the back of the Are You OK Day initiative, Mental Health Week has rolled around. And mental health is something that we take very seriously at Triax, and it's something that's pretty important and close to our hearts. And we'd like to dedicate this podcast episode to having a bit of an open discussion in the hope that people out there can do the same amongst their family and friends. So today, Sean's going to share with us some of his mental health battles throughout the past 5 to 10 years, and we're going to have a bit of open discussion about it, and hopefully, spur on some people out there to do the same with their loved ones. So, first of all, and as we always do, welcome to you, Sean.
Yeah, g'day, Rob. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. I'm good. It's spring. It's my time of year. The weather's a bit finer, and there's a lot more happening on and off the racetrack, which is good. And then, of course, we've got Damo as well in a bit different surrounds there. Damo, you look like you're a lot more illuminated than what you usually are. So, welcome to you.
Yeah, I'm out of the Soviet conditions of my bedroom, and I'm on location at my girlfriend Haley's place. So we might get a stray cat pop in. Casper might get a cameo here, but I'd just like to say thank you to Sean firstly for feeling comfortable to open up on the public forum here about this. Obviously, he wasn't able to make the Are You OK Day, but it's great that he's opened up and willing to talk ahead of Mental Health Week. So I think the floor is going to be mainly yours, and we'll sit here and hopefully facilitate some good conversation for you, Shawnee.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I appreciate those words, Damo. So I guess as sort of alluded to off the top, I have struggled with my mental health, and I want to be, I guess, open and honest in the hopes that it might start a conversation somewhere, and I guess just go through sort of how I reached out and initially got a bit of help when I was struggling. So I guess for the purposes of today, I don't really like putting a label on it, but I guess I have been diagnosed with a major depressive disorder, which sounds pretty grim, but it's what is more commonly known as clinical depression. So I guess it's, without getting into the nuts and bolts of it now, we'll sort of touch on that later, but I guess it's almost like feelings of like prolonged sadness or worthlessness without much cause and effect. So there's not much, I guess, usually what happens is people get upset about things because something's happened, but this is almost without reason, I guess. Yeah, I guess I want to talk about it because I found that when I initially was struggling and wanted to open up, that I sort of gravitated towards people who had also spoken pretty openly about their own mental health struggles. So I guess my overall aim, I know we don't have thousands or millions of followers, but hopefully there might be someone listening that either that spurs a conversation with someone they are close with, or even with me or one of us. So yeah, I guess it's because it is such a hard thing to describe. I think that when you do approach someone that's been through it, it's a little bit easier to understand in a way. So I guess that anytime you hear someone with a story or gone through things that's similar to yours, it sort of makes you feel a little less overwhelmed, I guess. So, yeah, I just hope that maybe someone can gain some benefit out of it, because I know I certainly gain benefit out of hearing other people talk about it. And yeah, I'm not an expert. I'm not a psychologist. I can't really provide many solutions necessarily, but hopefully if I can just give some insight into what I've done before, or how I reached out, maybe that can help someone else to do the same.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how do you, to get sort of the ball rolling for you there, Shawnee, how did it sort of start out for you, or how did you sort of pick up that maybe something wasn't quite right for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's always, I guess looking back, there's probably always been elements like going back to high school, where I know we're all pretty emotionally immature in our teenage years, but there were just some things like looking back, there was just like maybe there was something more to it. And I haven't had a bad upbringing. I was, had a pretty good childhood, and no significant trauma or anything like that. So I guess for me, looking back, I didn't recognize it at the time, but looking back, the tipping point, I think, was when our family dog got put down, and that happened pretty suddenly, and it rocked me and hit me for six. And it's probably it's strange to talk about sometimes, because I think that there are people that, and it's not a slight on anyone, but there are some people that just aren't animal people, I guess, and that don't understand, I guess, the impact that like a dog can have on your life sometimes. But I guess during that time, like I just finished uni as well, and had job interviews and didn't get anywhere, and I was sort of treading water for a bit, I guess, in a way that I felt a bit directionless at that time anyway. And then that sort of pushed things over the edge a bit, I think. And then, so obviously I was, pretty upset when that did happen, but then it never really went away. So I was, just at the point where like I wasn't interacting with anyone socially, and I wanted to stay home all the time, and just was pretty down all the time. And ended up going overseas probably 3 months after that happened, and was like sort of by myself for most of it, and I was pretty miserable and pretty lonely, to be honest. And then once I got back went to America, once I got back about 6-7 weeks later, that's when I sort of thought, something's probably not right here. Like it's hard to articulate what it was, but it was just a general feeling that something felt off, or it just didn't feel right.
So, Shawnee, was this trip, had you already planned to go on it, or is this not a last minute, but was it something you thought you needed to do after this experience? So how did the trip come up?
It was something I'd been wanting to do, pretty much all of that year. But nothing was booked prior to that. So everything was booked afterwards, just because I had it in my head that's what I wanted to do. And I was comfortable going, like scared going by myself, because I'd never been overseas by myself, or really anywhere by myself. But I probably didn't realize until I was there that being by myself probably wasn't the best thing. Best thing for me. And then and I wasn't by myself the whole time. I ended up doing like one of those tour group things that you can jump on for a couple of weeks, and that was really good. Had a really good time with that. And then after that as well, when I was by myself again, felt pretty average. And then as I said, once I got home, I was like, something's probably not right here. So
Yeah. Interesting. So then, when you did get home, I guess, what did you identify? What did you do to try and improve your situation?
I can't remember exactly when I did it, but I eventually started looking into like trying to book in for a psychologist, and read that you can get it rebated because it's pretty expensive. You can get Medicare rebates, but you got to go to a GP first. Yeah. So I did that. You ask for a mental health plan, and sort of did that with the GP. But I can't remember the exact circumstances around, but there was a bit of a fuck around with it, and that I had to come back for a second appointment with the GP, and it ended up being a different GP, and it was just a bit all over the place. But anyway, I got a referral for a psychologist, just one locally in Pakenham, where I was living at the time. Called them, and this was, sorry, just to backtrack, this was mid 2019. Called them, and then the waiting list was like 2 to 3 months. So I was like,
right.
well, I got pretty, felt pretty disenchanted by the whole experience, because from the GP to the psychologist, and at the time, and we can sort of touch on this later, but at the time I didn't realize that the person you get referred to, you can't, like, you don't have to just see them. You can actually do your own research and book in and try and find somewhere else.
So all you need is a referral, because this might be interesting information for other people. So all you need is essentially a referral from a doctor, and then you can go from wherever you need to go. Is that right?
Yeah. So I guess later on is
that if you want to go through the Medicare rebate system?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can do it by yourself, but and pay for it all out of pocket, but it is very expensive. But
from my knowledge, I know a few people that have gone through it. Is it 5 consultations you can claim on there per year before you have to start paying out of pocket?
They've increased it because of COVID. I think it's up to 20 now. So it was 6, and then you go back to the GP for like a reassessment, and then you can get another 4. So it used to be 10 when I first started. It was 10, but now it's gone up to 20, I think.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know.
But yeah, so I guess it was just, as I said, felt pretty disenchanted, because I pretty nerve-wracking to one, I guess, after fighting it off for a few months, mustering up the sort of courage to go to a GP, and I guess speaking out loud for the first time the words that I'm probably not doing okay. And then I just felt a bit let down by the whole experience, I guess. So I just left it. I didn't try and rebook or try and find a different psychology clinic or something like that to book in. I just left it, and probably wasn't, I still felt not great, and things still didn't feel right, but I wasn't at the point where I was like, felt that immediate need to go and change things. I didn't feel like I had to do it on the spot. But then, a few months after that, I started seeing Molly, and she recognized it after a few months that something probably wasn't right, and we ended up speaking about it. And I guess she, hope she doesn't mind me saying, but she sort of put her foot down a bit, and and said that it's something that I need to go and sort out, like in a nice way. So I guess if she never did that and never sort of pushed me to go and do that, I don't know. Sort of don't know where a bit, like, I owe a lot to her for that, I guess, because she was really supportive. She drove me to the doctors to go and get that mental health plan again and sort it out, and made sure I called the psychologist and booked the appointment, and always, called me after my appointments and checked in and made sure I was getting on top of it. So probably needed that little bit of encouragement, and I guess that's what I want to talk about later is I guess the importance of telling someone that you're not okay, so that you've got that little bit of accountability in a way.
That was going to be a question of mine actually just there, Sean, was the doctor the first person that you actually said anything to? Had you spoken to family members or anything like that, or is it legitimately just the doctor the first person you spoke to?
Yeah, just the doctor. So I'm pretty closed off at the best of times. I internalize a lot of things and don't really like to let people in and let them know what I'm going through. So yeah, the doctor, which I mean, it didn't help. I didn't then have a regular GP, so it wasn't someone I had a rapport with or anything like that either. So looking back, that probably didn't help. But yeah, doctor was the first person I sort of let know that I probably wasn't doing too well and needed a bit of help.
So, mate, you touched on a good point there. Is that a lot of blokes, our age in particular, when was the last time you went and saw a doctor regularly? So I saw him recently from a little bit of a yoga issue, which we can touch on. We can touch upon in a different episode altogether, because that's just the most worst thing you've ever heard. But I hadn't been a doctor in 10 years, so I didn't have a GP like you do when you're a kid. Yeah. So are you guys the same? Have you got a GP that you know and knows your history?
Yeah, I actually had this conversation with my mum the other day about going to the doctor down here. Since I've moved to Melbourne, which is probably 7 or 8 years now, I think I've only been once because I was genuinely unwell. So I don't have a regular GP. I just booked in wherever I could get in. So no, I don't have that rapport.
And do you reckon that is a problem, Sean? Do you reckon this is just hypothetical, but do you reckon if you had an established rapport with a GP that you've been seeing, do you reckon it would have been easier for you to go to someone and say, I'm not doing too well? Do you reckon that's an issue as well?
I don't think it would have encouraged me to go any earlier. I just think that maybe the whole process itself might have been a little bit easier, and it wouldn't have been too much back and forth, I think. So that's certainly something I would recommend. Make sure you have a regular GP. And I've just never, as you said, since I was a kid, I've never had a regular GP. I don't go to the doctors that often.
Yeah.
So I don't. Yeah. And Molly thought it was weird that I didn't have a regular GP. I'm like, well, I don't go that often. So, but now I've had to go since moving closer to the city. I guess I've for other reasons, I've had to have a few checks and stuff for uni placement to tick off. So I've been having some more regular doctor's appointments just for that. So now I've got a bit more of a regular GP, and definitely makes things easier.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point you made there, Rob, is that probably females our age have to go to the doctor regularly for other reasons, whereas males really, like you said, you only go if you're genuinely unwell. So it's not uncommon that it's not uncommon to not actually have a GP. So I think that's a really good piece of advice there, that if that is something, maybe go and find someone that you have a good rapport with to start those conversations.
Yeah.
Mate, that's it as well, is that even if you go get a blood test once a year, up until this point, because eventually, and that's the thing, now we're in our mid-20s, when we start getting the wrong side of 30, we have to start going for checkups and stuff. So you may as well just start now and get a good process in. But so we might pivot on now, Sean, into, I guess, what are the acute sort of things that sort of arise day to day when you're feeling a bit down or whatever the symptoms are. I'm not really quite sure how to put it or what's appropriate, but maybe if you can just give us a bit of an insight into what it's like day to day and what the highs look like and the lows, if that is what you describe it as.
Yeah. I guess it's different for everyone, and there's I guess mental illness is always on a a spectrum or a continuum. So I don't know where I sit on that. I'd like to think I'm generally okay, but there's just some days or some periods where it's gets just a bit harder, I guess. So and I find it quite hard to articulate how it affects me, I guess. So it can be a little bit complex, but I think the main thing is like there's no clear trajectory of what's happening or what's going to happen. Like with if you have like a physical ailment, I think you have a decent indication of the course that it'll take. Whereas I guess with mental illness, it can change every day, every week. It's up and down. It's pretty unpredictable to get a gauge on. So like today, for example, I'm good. The last week I've been generally pretty good. In fact, like the last couple of months have actually been not too bad. But yeah, within that, there's always periods of, up and down, the good and the bad. So I guess that's where it gets you as well. Like it's a bit of a constant back and forth of like, you think you're okay. And then all of a sudden you feel like you're completely incapable of functioning. So, it's, as I said, it's hard to get a gauge on. Like you feel, or when for me, I feel like less, like I'm less in control, I guess, in a way. Almost like I've got no control over myself, and like I'm obviously still sane and alert. I'm not running off doing anything stupid, but like you just feel a bit powerless in a way, and that, I guess, that makes me just want to like curl up in bed and not go out much, and don't really have the energy to do many things. So besides like the necessities, I guess. So
so you're probably at that end of the scale where you're at the like very like down in the dump sort of phase, whereas some people, when they've got like mental health issues, they might go the opposite and be manic. You're sort of more at that depressive end, I guess.
So I don't know much about different mental health disorders, I guess, or anything like that, but from my understanding of it, I guess I don't have anything that's as you said, too manic. Like I've never been suicidal or anything like that. I guess it's just just like some really long, like prolonged periods of feeling pretty shit, I guess, for no reason. And I guess like I tend to like I'll probably like socially withdraw a bit. So like whether that like conversations, I don't find that particularly easy at the best of times. So when I'm bad, it probably comes across as a bit rude, but I guess it's almost like self-preservation in a way. Just making sure I like don't drain my own batteries in a way, I guess. I think another one as well is feeling both physically and mentally fatigued, but without any exertion.
Right. Okay.
And I don't really know why, but it's just like having, and there could be multiple factors at play. Like this is something I've spoken to both GP and psychologists about. Like it could be, sleep, diet, other things, but there's probably an element of the mental health stuff that does affect that. I guess like mentally it's fatiguing because it's just like there's a battle going on. But I guess just even some days, I guess just doing the necessities, like getting up, making breakfast, and plodding around a bit. That can be pretty tiring, which I know like it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and that's why it's hard to describe. But they're probably the main ones.
do you sort of want to touch on what sort of things I guess you do to stay on top of it, or what you've found has sort of worked for you to try and mitigate what's happening in terms of that? Any strategies you've got, or things that you do, or that your psychologist might have recommended?
Yeah, I like the thing is generally you know what you need to do, but it's a matter of actually doing it. And like it makes me feel, I guess it makes me feel pretty lazy. It's almost it's a bit of a loop or a cycle of you feel shit, so you don't go and do the things that make you feel better, and then because you didn't do those things you feel shit again, and it's just a bit of a loop. But like exercise is probably a big one. It's pretty cliche, I guess, and obviously a lot of people recommend it, and it's probably without sounding too pessimistic, it's not it's not a solution. It's like you can't just do exercise and you feel better, but it might put, I guess, the odds in your favor a little bit to maybe lessen your symptoms, I guess, maybe. But like, for example, the last how long has it been? Probably 2.5 months, 2.5 months. I've been trying to get 10,000 steps a day, which that's pretty much going back to when we went back into lockdown. I felt like I needed to just do that to make sure I stayed on top of things, and it just sort of forced me to get outside a bit and go for a walk, and that certainly helped, because the more I sort of sit around all day or sit in bed, I like feel worse after that. So and I guess the competitiveness in me doesn't want to break that streak now, so that's, which is good. But I think as well, even just like as you touching on like the psychology of it, like you asked Damo, probably just being easier on myself and more accepting rather than resisting how I feel. Like normally I guess I would feel shit and sort of be like, why do I feel like this? Like, this is so annoying. Like I just want it to go away. But now it's almost like instead of fighting it, trying to acknowledge how I feel and then just sort of letting it simmer, do what I need to do to sort of sit with it, or just let it be for a bit, and then eventually it'll pass, which is good. So yeah, that's probably like, there's a few other things like journaling, Rob, which you've got me onto. I'm not very consistent with it, but as you've mentioned to me, externalizing your thoughts certainly does help sometimes. Like meditation every now and then. I actually haven't had any alcohol in 4.5 months, so I wouldn't say I had a problem with alcohol, but just like whenever I did, like I wasn't getting going on weekend long benders or anything like that. But
did have a loyalty card at the Swan Hotel just quietly, but okay.
I guess I just recognised that when I did drink, I felt pretty shit, not only physically but mentally as well. Like that, probably at the time of drinking and the next day. So thought I'd just back off for a bit. That was probably just before lockdown sort of started, and that's been good. Not something I miss or anything like that. And then I guess the other things would be seeing a psychologist, and I've actually just started taking medication in the last week or so. So I was pretty hesitant and resistant to that, but after some conversations with a couple of friends that have sort of been through it, figured it might be worth giving it a go and see how we go.
Were you hesitant because you felt there might be a stigma surrounding medication or taking medication for a mental health problem, Sean? Is that why?
Yeah, I would say so. And I don't know why. I don't really know where that came from. was trying to think about it, and I thought that I had no logical reason not to. I couldn't come up with one. Like there would be side effects with any medication, which I'm aware of, but I think the pros probably outweigh the cons. If I had a physical ailment, if I had a dodgy heart or my liver was failing or something like that, I'd be popping pills to get that back in fix. But I think it was more just I thought it was probably like a band-aid approach. And now that I had tried some other avenues, like the psychologist and just some lifestyle things, and it probably still wasn't where I wanted it to be or needed it to be. So I guess that's hopefully going to help with that.
And so how do you feel now that you're in that process? Do you feel like you look back and think that stigma probably wasn't warranted or necessary? Is that how you look back on it now, that you're in that process? It's not as bad as what you think?
I don't know yet, because I probably built it up in my head a fair bit. And as I said, I've only been taking it for about a week. So they reckon that you start to either feel side effects after probably a week or two, and then it'll actually start to take effect a bit longer after that. So probably too early to tell in a way. I am still a bit nervous about it, I guess. I guess not knowing how it's going to work or side effects, which I guess going back to before, I was probably looking for side effects as a reason not to take them. But probably too early to tell. But I think just taking them to begin with and just getting over that first little hurdle, not as hard as I thought it would be.
Yeah, I think just from experience with a few people close to me with it, it can take a little bit just to get the dosages right of those particular medications. And sometimes it does take a couple of sort of cycles to get it just right for you. And a lot of people, what actually tends to happen is that you slowly wean yourself off it or down to very low doses. So, but yeah, like you said, with the side effects, it normally sort of takes a few weeks to kick in and sort of take effect. So hopefully it's not too bad for you, Shawnee.
Fingers crossed.
So Shawnee, we've touched on it a couple of times about like the stigma, that stigma, like you may have had a stigma why you didn't really want to take medication because of what you thought that might mean, and some of the other stigmas surrounding mental health. Why do you think that when you were dealing with it on your own, why did it not improve? Why, I don't want to say it didn't work, but why do you think it didn't improve to the level that you wanted it to?
I think, as I said, it's sort of internalizing things as always, and not sharing things is something I've always done, even as a kid, despite mum's continuous encouragement. I was pretty stubborn and probably didn't want to talk about how I was feeling and if something was bothering me. But I guess in a way as well, I probably felt like a bit of a fraud in a way, or that I wasn't worthy. I don't know, worthy is not the right word, but like with mental health struggles, because I'd had a good upbringing. I hadn't had any significant trauma that I had to deal with. And I guess I probably just needed someone to tell me that it doesn't matter that that's the case, or those are your circumstances. Like it can still affect anyone, as we've heard so often. So I guess it was just frustrating to me trying to work out why I was feeling that way, despite seeing, I knew that other people had, bad days and they seemingly got on with it. And obviously I know that, looking at social media, that it is a highlight reel, but I guess sometimes you take it at face value, and that can be a little discouraging as well, because you're thinking that, these people are doing all those things. Why do I feel this way? As I mentioned, I wasn't suicidal, so I didn't think that it mustn't be that bad. But yeah, I guess those were all the sort of thoughts that was going through my head. And if I had spoken to someone earlier, I would have been able to sort of rationalize it a bit more and been told that, hey, that actually doesn't matter. Like, it can still affect people in different ways and despite different circumstances. So
I think that's a great point about it perhaps being a bit the extreme side of things being what gets portrayed in the media or what our perceptions are of mental health. But it can be like the little things as well. Like you said, it doesn't really discriminate based on your lifestyle or upbringing, the rich, the poor. It sort of affects everyone. So that's a good point you make there.
Yeah, and I think I think we've come a long way in mental health advocacy and the awareness of it. And if I'm honest, I don't think there's really much of a mental health stigma anymore. But what I've heard someone call it it's like a self stigma in a way, that everyone's pretty comfortable advocating for mental health and mental well-being and checking in on their mates and doing all that sort of thing. But when it actually comes to themselves, they're probably not good enough at putting their hand up and saying, look, I need a bit of help, or I'm actually not okay. And I think that snowballs in a way, because then when you reach out to someone and when you talk to someone, you get that kind of like that objective view in a way. Like when you're trying to think about your own problems, you don't think about it rationally or objectively. So I guess that having the point of view or having someone else to give you some thoughts or ideas without skin in the game, that can be beneficial as well. So that's what I would certainly advocate for. Like, despite, and it's tough because I think everyone knows that, and the message clearly is, if you're struggling, reach out and talk to someone. But and I don't know the answer to it, and I don't know why people still don't. I don't know why I didn't, but I cannot encourage it enough that it will get the ball rolling and get things feeling better. So
that's awesome, man. That's really really good to hear, and it's a great message to everyone. And I guess so. We've just spoken about then why it probably didn't work on when you're just trying to handle it by yourself, and you've made some good points there about not having objectivity with your own thoughts. I guess then that extends that. What were the benefits that you saw or have seen from seeing a psychologist and getting that professional help?
I'm probably more aware of my thoughts. So I guess what I'm feeling and why I might be feeling that. So I guess I spoke about before that when I was feeling pretty down or pretty shit, I'd sort of try and fight it off. But now I try to step back a little bit and think, what's happened for me to be feeling this way. And sometimes I don't have an answer, and I've sort of learnt that that's also okay, as opposed to thinking, well, I've got no reason to be upset or down and just fighting it. And that, I guess, that makes it worse. So, yeah, and it's probably not something that I do consciously. I think at the start it was something I had to do, but I think over time it sort of just becomes more of a default response in a way that you can step back a bit and sort of think that, sort of challenge your thoughts as well. Like I was a term that I'd never heard before, but I've been pegged a catastrophizer. So whatever will go wrong, whatever I think might go wrong will go wrong, and it's always the worst possible outcome. So challenging those thoughts is and sort of weighing up the information, whether I've actually made a accurate judgment or not. as well. So yeah, they're probably the main things. And as I sort of touched on before, like having a bit more compassion for myself and acceptance that this is something that I've got to deal with, I guess. So I haven't, I guess it was sort of explained to me that like you haven't done anything wrong. Like you haven't made mistakes along the way that's ended up like for you to end up here. And there might not have been anything you could have done. Like there's obviously a multitude of reasons why people struggle with their mental health. And for some people there's no significant reason. So I guess, yeah, they're probably the main things. And I honestly could not recommend seeing a psychologist more. So I'd recommend it to everyone. I unfortunately don't think the system's set up for everyone to see one based on resources and two based on cost. But regardless of whether you struggle with your mental health or not, I think they are very, very beneficial.
That's probably a good point to move on from there, Sean. That so if you don't necessarily have access to a psychologist, or maybe it's not something that you're going to do, what is something that people you know can do to sort of help people with mental health?
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good question, Damo. And we've obviously had as we touched on at the top, a Are You OK Day recently, which I have some thoughts about, but I think overall it's a very good message. But I think as a friend or a loved one or a family member or workmate, whatever it is, I think you just need to be there consistently. So I guess letting the other person know that, hey, if you are struggling, well, not even struggling, just if you need a chat, I'm here. And then if it is a person that you know does have mental health struggles, it could just be making sure you like set up a time or a place to constantly check in and have that accountability, I guess. But it's very tough, and trying to have those conversations with someone that is struggling, that's why the psychologists are the experts, and they're the experts for a reason. They obviously do a lot of study and training. And I think that when someone is struggling and might admit to you or reach out to you that, hey, I'm actually not doing okay, I think a lot of the time, and this is certainly a mistake I've made in the past and probably still do sometimes, is trying to problem solve and provide solutions for them. But I think a lot of the time someone just needs someone to listen to them and be supportive, and someone to validate their feelings in a way and say, hey, that's a pretty shitty circumstance, like I hope you're doing okay. It's hard because like we're not well versed enough in providing the solutions as much as we may want to. So there's actually a really good resource on the Movember website. It's just called Movember Conversations, I think. And it just gives like a few different scenarios about how to sort of approach those conversations. And obviously it's scripted, so like it's only going to go so far, but it can give you sort of, I guess, a rough idea of maybe how to approach those conversations, or once you find yourself in the conversation, how to navigate it in a way so you can get sort of the best outcomes. So yeah, I guess just to cut a long story short, just make sure you're supportive, listen without judgment, and just do it. Try and be there consistently.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you make about making yourself accountable at the start there, Sean, where you set a time or a date or a location, because often people with mental health issues are quite anxious
Yeah.
as well, and not being able to set in a time or a location or a mode of communications often an additional cause of their stresses. So I think that's an excellent point, to just make sure that it's consistent, it's known, so that they can sort of prepare for the situation as well if they're not having the best day when you are doing that.
Yeah. Like if you ambush isn't the right word, but if you ambush someone and be like, what's going on? What's wrong? Like, I know for me, I'd probably shut down pretty quickly and not want to probably open up. So, and it could just be like something like they might have mentioned in the past that they were struggling with. It could be work, it could be, paying the bills, family, relationships, whatever. And you could just ask how that's going. And that could, be the opening to sort of open up a little bit more, as opposed to just straight out asking, hey, are you okay? How's your mental health? That sort of thing. So one thing I actually wanted to touch on was, I think that we can do, or anyone can do, all the checking in the world, but ultimately at the end of the day, the other person needs to be comfortable enough to open up. I guess it could be the wrong person. It could just not be the right environment. It could just be how they're feeling at the time. Like, for example, something that I've been, like for me, that I've been dealing with for over three years now, where it's probably been noticeable, and it's something that I only let the two of you in on, what was it, a couple of weeks ago. So that's not, and I don't want you guys to take that personally. It's not a slight on either of you. Literally only a handful of people knew. Mum only something I spoke to her about probably 6 months ago. So if you're just there for someone consistently, I think, and just asking the right questions and making it known that you're there, that I think eventually they will open up. And like we've had conversations before, the two of, like the three of us, that we're finding certain things difficult, or whether it be work or relationships or family, anything like that. But yeah, as I said, it's probably not something that I probably and I don't know why, maybe to protect myself a little bit. I honestly don't really have the answer to it, but sometimes it's just wasn't really something I was prepared to open up about to anyone and everyone. And it's nothing personal. I hope you boys didn't take it personally, but where I'm at now and sort of being more accepting of it has made me feel more open to talk about it.
Yeah, the thousands and millions of listeners on the Triax channels are now across it too, Shawnee. So there might be an influx of messages and calls, but no, that's no offense taken. Knowing people are in the same position, like, I guess we were probably doing it without really realizing we were doing it anyway in our conversations that we have quite regularly. Obviously, we did quite a bit of face-to-face work together, and would sort of check in on each other once a week about how things were going without knowing, what's going on individually, and then sort of on our group chat and that as well. So I guess I appreciate that you're comfortable enough to speak about it with us and bring it up with us as well. It's up to you when you feel ready to do that. I mean, if you only told your mum 6 months ago, it's actually quite nice to be included in that not too long afterwards. So
yeah, and I definitely appreciate having both of you boys to sort of bounce our thoughts off and our struggles off. And I think we've all three of us have been a pretty open book most of the time. So it's definitely good. I think having mates that work in the same sort of field as well. Like, we're obviously mates because of those interests, but we're also, I think, just genuinely mates. So being able to talk about those sort of things with the two of you and getting your insights certainly helps. And I appreciate having both your insights on so many different things. So as you sort of mentioned, Damo, you guys probably didn't realize how helpful you were being, but yeah, you both were very helpful. Just knowing that you guys were there when I needed to chat about things. So I appreciate it.
Shawnee, mate, you've been absolutely sensational today, and you've been upfront and honest, and I've personally got a lot out of it myself. I know Damo probably has, and I'm sure a lot of people out there as well. So first, it's credit to you, mate, for really putting yourself out there and making yourself vulnerable. So well done to you. Is there anything you'd like to leave, I guess, people with in terms of some of the steps that they can maybe take from here on in to improve their mental health and make it a priority?
Yeah, so I think, and I'll go through a few steps in a second, but I think another one is to make it, like, as you just said there, Rob, make your mental health a priority. And this is for like an individual and those supporting them as well, but be supportive of proactive behaviors, I guess, rather than being reactive and waiting for things to blow up or boil over. So I guess at an individual level, and this is certainly something I've improved on, I think, like if I've got a lengthy to-do list, but I know that it would be more beneficial to leave it for half a day or a day, then I think I've gotten better at doing that. And I think that extends to friends or family members or even employers to support those proactive behaviors. That if someone turns around and says, and they might not give you the reason that they're struggling, but if someone says that, oh, I need a day off work, or I need some time off, however long that might be, or I don't want to come to a certain event, or I just want to stay home, that sort of thing. I guess be supportive of that and give the benefit of the doubt, I guess, because I think the pressure to keep fulfilling those expectations sort of compounds the problem. And I saw a good picture the other day. It was like the fuel tank dial, and it's like when we should take a break, and it was when it was sort of half full, and and then comparison to when we actually take a break and when the tank's empty. So I think just don't, and it's not a perfect science. You're not always going to get it right, but trying to recognize that you don't want to empty the tank.
That's absolutely sensational. It's something that anyone can probably take something out of as well. Like, we've got a lot of projects on the go, and it's pretty easy to have a bit of a narrow focus and then just grind yourself into the ground.
Yeah,
it's not sustainable, is it?
No. So yeah, as I mentioned, I want to give a bit of a step by step on how to reach out and get some help. So it's not an exhaustive list. This is just, I guess, what worked for me and my circumstances. So number one would be, don't go it alone. Let someone know that you're struggling. This could be family member, friend, a mentor. As I said, it could be one of us or me. You know, our messages or our inboxes are always open, and I think that just holds you accountable. So you could ask them to come with you. You could ask them to drive you to appointments or to the doctors, because you know you won't do it yourself. And I know that if you ask them, that they would be more than happy to do that. So yeah, from there, book in an appointment with your GP. We touched on having a regular GP before. If you don't have one, and this is something I did the second time, if you search on the clinic websites, there's generally a list of the practitioners now, and they have a description of, I guess, their interests or specialties. and some of them will have mental health listed as that. So if you don't have a regular GP that you have a rapport with, I would strongly suggest doing that, because I think that helps. The GP appointment, ask for it's called a mental health plan. And that will essentially just be, they give you like a questionnaire to fill out, and that just assesses, I guess, where you're at. Can't remember the name of it. And then from there, if suitable, I guess, you'll be entitled to Medicare rebate on, I think, 6 sessions. It may have changed because of COVID, but I think the 6 sessions is still in place. And then once those 6 sessions are up, that's when you go back to the GP, do the questionnaire again, and then you get the extra sessions, which I think has gone up to 20, but I could be wrong. I haven't done a lot of research on it. So yeah, you'll get the referral. Get a referral to a psychologist. What I did, based on, I guess, not a mistake I made, but a learning, or something I learned from the first time, is I asked for a list of psychologists that they would recommend, or that they generally refer to. And this way, I thought that by having a list, if I called the first one and there was a long waiting time, I could go to the next one and then the next one if I needed to. And as well, you're also not limited to who you're referred to, so you can actually do your own research, I guess, and try and find someone that you think might be beneficial for you. I guess at the moment it's there's a bit of a logjam with the increased demand, so there probably will be a little bit of a waiting time, but generally you can ask to be put on a waiting list, I think. So like if an appointment is cancelled, they can, so say they don't have an availability for 2 months, but an appointment is cancelled in 2 weeks, they might call you and say, hey, we've had an opening. And that's actually how I got my first appointment. I called and they said they'd had a cancellation. There was an appointment the next day. So that worked in my favour, which was good looking back. So yeah, I think you just have to be pretty relentless about it. It can be bloody tough and overwhelming and exhausting, putting yourself out there, admitting that you need help. And then when you do get knocked back from these clinics saying that they're not taking on new patients or there are long waiting times, it can be, pretty tough. But and I think that's where having someone to keep you accountable as well can certainly help. So yeah, as I mentioned, seeing a psychologist could not recommend it anymore. If you do need more immediate help, there are like the phone lines that you can reach out to, like Lifeline and Beyond Blue, and they even have like text message services now. So there are a multitude of them, and we'll leave them in the podcast show notes if you need to access them. But yeah, that's how I went about it, and how I guess would recommend to go about it.
Well, mate, I think we might wrap it up there. I think you've covered a lot, and you've been honest and vulnerable, and quite commendable in what you've talked about today. And it's not easy, and it takes a lot of guts to do what you've done. And first of all, we thank you for doing that, because hopefully it's helped someone out there take the steps that they need to take to improve their mental health and quality of life, which is of the utmost importance. So thanks to you, mate, for doing that. It's really appreciate it.
No worries, boys. As I said on the top, I hope that even if no one gets any benefit out of this, which I certainly hope that someone does, and it might spur on a conversation somewhere, that it's just something I want to be more open and honest about, rather than keeping it this big bad secret. So I appreciate you both both listening and your questions and your comments and just your overall support as well.
Fantastic stuff, Shawnee. Yeah.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it, Shawnee. Proud of you, mate. So that's about it. That's all we've got time for today on the DeakHeads podcast. And thanks for tuning in. And as Sean said, that we'll have plenty of information in the show notes and the description as well to look at it. And hopefully you can get the ball rolling on mental health or check in with someone and start a good process in improving your mental health. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time from the DeakHeads podcast.